If you've ever wondered why so many sewists and bag makers have a Juki sewing machine that looks a lot like this one, or if you've ever wondered if it might be a good fit for you, I'm about to spill the beans. Hi, I'm Shelly and I'm a long armor, a quilter, a bag maker, and I have owned and loved using my Juki TL-2010Q, that's the exact model number for this one right here, for over 10 years now. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the things that I love about it, including number 8, which is a feature that it has spoiled me rotten, and now I don't think I could ever live without. And I'm also going to be sharing with you the things that I wish that they would improve on for this trusty workhorse of a sewing machine. First things first, let's talk about exactly which sewing machine I have. So Juki has a line of semi-industrial machines that all start with the letters TL. And there are, at the time that I'm recording this, there are 4 models available. And I specifically have the TL-2010Q. And where that falls in the lineup is second from the bottom in terms of price and features. So the price for this is usually about $1,000 US. That's pretty standard. You can find it in most places for that price. And what sets it apart between this and the lower model is that the 2010Q has got 2 features. It's got a speed controller on it, which means that you can adjust the speed anywhere between rabbit and turtle, which sets the maximum speed. And the 2010Q also has this secondary, they call it a sub-tension unit, which is sort of a secondary way of adjusting the tension for your top thread. I have never touched this and probably never will. So the difference between the 2010Q and the higher end models is that the higher end models come with more features and usually more accessories as well. Now let's talk about the things that I love about my Juki sewing machine, starting with number 1, the fact that it is super heavy duty. This thing is a beast, okay? It's made out of die-cast aluminum and it weighs, according to my bathroom scale, just over 25 pounds. So it is like, it's for serious. And it feels like when you touch it, you can just feel that it's got really great quality and that it's going to last for generations. And you know how they say they don't make things like they used to? Well, they were not talking about this sewing machine because this is a quality, durable build. Number 2, it has a small footprint. So despite the fact that it's a mega beast when it comes to its build quality, it doesn't actually take up that much room. The Juki measures approximately 18 inches wide by 9 inches deep by 9 inches tall, not including this thread stand right here. And for me, that's really important because I take my sewing machine with me to a retreat twice a year and I have very limited space in my vehicle. So I really appreciate that it's got a small footprint and I can bring my ride or die favorite sewing machine with me and it doesn't take up a ton of room. And yes, I really do transport it in a blue plastic IKEA bag. Maybe one day I'll make it something a little bit more befitting of my love for it, but for now that works really well. Number 3, these Jukis have a large throat space on them. So despite the fact that these Juki TL models are actually fairly compact, they have a really respectable throat size on them. There's a full 8.5 inches of space to the right of the needle before you reach the main part of the sewing machine, which is a great option for people who like to either quilt their own projects at home, including larger projects, because they'll be able to fit them in this space. Or if you're like me and you sew a lot of larger bags, there's enough room in here for me to shove duffel bags through this throat space, no problem whatsoever. Number 4, we gotta talk about the stitch quality on these machines. These Juki TL sewing machines produce some of the prettiest stitches that I have ever seen in my life. And yes, that is nice aesthetically, I suppose, but it's also really important for the longevity of your sewing projects. Because when you've got a really pretty stitch, it means that the seams and the threads themselves are locking perfectly between the layers of the fabric, which means that your project is going to stand up to the test of time. Because if you had a wonky stitch where the tension was off, it would wear more quickly and your stitches would be more compromised. And I had this machine for 9 years before I ever had it serviced. And the reason that I didn't have to get it serviced in that time is because the stitches kept looking great. And if ever I had a problem where the tension looked a little bit off, it's really easy to adjust it on these machines using either the tension assembly on the front of the machine or adjusting the bobbin tension. And those 2 little adjustments meant that my stitches looked pretty the whole time that I've owned this machine. Get ready for a little TED Talk because number 5 is all about even feeding. So I feel like this is going to be a bit of a soapbox moment for me, but The Juki sewing machine does a really great job of feeding the 2 layers of fabric. If you're sewing 2 layers of fabric together like you're quilting, it does a really great job of feeding them together evenly. Whereas a lot of other sewing machines do not do that. A lot of other sewing machines feed them together unevenly, which means that as you sew together, the fabrics actually shift and move apart. So if you started and you were trying to sew 2 5-inch squares together and you were sewing down one side of them, by the time you get to the bottom of that 5-inch square, you'll notice that your fabrics are not where they should be and they're not lining up at the bottom. And this is something I have a really tough time trying to explain and convince new sewists about, because you can buy an expensive sewing machine, but it doesn't mean that it's going to do a good job of sewing those 2 layers together. And if you ask me, that is the whole thing that a sewing machine is supposed to do. Yes, it's supposed to put stitches in it, but it should be able to feed those 2 layers together evenly. And if it's not, I don't know what it's doing and I don't know who invented it. So the problem with them not feeding together evenly is that when you then go to actually sew your pieces together, they're not going to match because you're not going to have even pieces. And if you don't know that that is what the problem is and you're a new sewist, you're gonna think, why does anybody like quilting? This is so frustrating and I hate it. And I wouldn't blame you if that's how you felt if you had a sewing machine that didn't feed your layers together evenly. So that's why I do really recommend getting a machine that will do a good job of this. And this machine that I have is one of the best ones that I've ever seen for this task. It just works. Number 6, let's talk about the speed of this machine. All of the models in the Juki TL lineup can stitch at a maximum speed of 1,500 stitches per minute, which is banana pants. It's so fast, you will not be able to see that needle moving. It's faster than you've probably ever sewed in your life. And while I don't typically sew that fast, I don't leave it in like rabbit mode with my foot all the way down on the pedal. I don't do that. I probably go about 3/4 speed. But I like that I can go pretty quickly and that it'll still keep an accurate seam and it'll still stitch beautiful stitches. The one time though that I really do like to kind of push the speed limit on this thing is when I'm stay stitching around the exterior of a piece that I have quilted and then just cut. So I'm making sure that I'm tacking down those quilting stitches so that they don't come undone. And I find that I can really let the machine fly and it's just fun to see just how fast it can go. Number 7 is something small but important to me, and that's this cone holder that's built into the machine. And it's funny because recently I had shared a reel about my sewing machine on Instagram, and somebody reached out and they asked me, Shelly, where did you get the special fancy cone holder that you use with your machine? And I had to explain to her, well, it's just part of the machine. It's built in, I didn't buy it, the machine just comes with that. And that's because a lot of sewing machines have sort of a flip-up compartment here, and then you would put a spool of thread horizontally, and that's how it pulls the thread off and it sews. But Juki has got this great little system on the back here where they've got 2 little posts. So I love that you could either put a spool of thread on here with a little spool capper, I don't know what the right word for that is, or you could use a cone of thread and they give you this little plastic bibbity bob that helps so you can put your cone on there as well. And it also comes with this telescopic thread holder so that the thread can come off your cone and up and then down and then sew it as it's meant to. I make a lot of quilts, I sew a lot, and so it's important for me to not use tiny little spools of thread. I like to use cones, and I just really appreciate that Juki included that as part of the machine and I didn't have to buy it as an extra accessory. Number 8 is all about the foot pedal thread cutter. And this has ruined me for life. I am spoiled rotten. I am now a pedal princess and I don't want any kind of a foot pedal that doesn't do what this one does. So whoever invented this deserves some kind of a Nobel Prize because they took something normal and they made it extraordinary. So how this works is that the Juki comes with a foot pedal and like normal, when you press on it, it starts to sew. And when you press on it further, it sews faster. However, if you rock your foot backwards, so if your heel comes down, it activates an automatic thread cutter, which means that as you're sewing and you finish a line of sewing, you just use your foot and it will cut the threads for you completely hands-free. And while it might not seem like the most important thing that has ever been invented for sewing machines, I think it is. It is so convenient and it is so much faster than having to pause and move my hands and press a little button, which I now never want to do again. So thank you, Juki, for this amazing foot pedal. Number 9 is all about this large extension table. So the Juki comes with a large extension table, and I like that on the back of it there's a spot to store your knee lifter, because otherwise what are you going to do with this thing? You're going to shove it in your closet and then lose it? That's what I would do. But I love that they go together, because I do have another sewing machine that has an extension table and a knee lifter, and they just don't go together. So that knee lifter is who knows where at this point. So kudos to Juki for thinking of that clever design. I'm sure it's been done before, but it works really well. It slides onto the machine very easily, and it's got rubber feet that are completely adjustable, so you can screw them up or screw them down in order to make this level. And I find that I like this table so much that I just leave it on my machine most of the time. Even if I'm just working on small little piecing, I'm still going to leave the extension table on, because it just feels luxurious to have all this space. They also included this little trap door so that you can access the bobbin area when your extension table is on. So they thought of everything, and I really like that all of the TL models have the extension table included in them, so you don't have to pay extra to purchase the extension table, because that would be a real bummer. Now let's talk about the things that I wish that Juki would do better on this machine, because yes, I love it, but there's always room for improvement. Starting with number 1, the lack of a 1/4 inch foot. So when you're quilting, and that is the main reason that I bought this sewing machine, you gotta have a really accurate 1/4 inch seam. And that is gonna be the key to success, along with the, proper pressing and feeding and even feeding. But that's gonna be the key to success, to make sure that all your pieces turn out the right size, so that when you go to sew them to their neighbors, they're also the right size, and everything just comes together in like a nice little puzzle, instead of you being frustrated trying to mash different size pieces together. And yes, this did come with some feet that were included, but I just could not get a consistent 1/4 inch seam. Luckily, I was able to purchase a aftermarket foot, is what we'll say. It's actually a Janome foot, but it fits on here no problem, because it's got the high shank, and it comes with a guide on it. And oh yeah, there it is right on my machine now, because this is the foot that I use 90% of the time when I'm quilting. And when I use this foot, I get a perfect Scant 1/4 inch seam every single time. And it's just a bummer that Juki doesn't provide something like this, because if you get this amazing machine, but none of your seams are the size they're supposed to be, sewing is gonna be a real drag, whereas they could set you up for success by giving you a foot that's gonna get you great results, and I don't think it would take too much more effort or cost on their part to include that foot. Number 2, the walking foot that I received with this sewing machine is in the garbage, because that's what it was, trash. Now, I'm gonna just put a quick little pause on this and say, yes, I know that you might have bought your machine and it might have come with a walking foot. It might work for you, but mine did not. And if you look at the internet, you'll see there's lots of other people who are in my same position. So the Juki did come with a walking foot, which is like a plus, because not every sewing machine will come with it. And a walking foot is really crucial when you're trying to quilt 3 layers of fabric together, because you really want all those layers to be fed together perfectly. But when I used that walking foot, there was no way around it. Every piece of fabric I ever quilted using that walking foot had tucks, puckers, pleats, and just general nastiness on the back of my quilt. It just was not feeding those layers together at the same time. So I watched every YouTube tutorial out there. I changed every setting and tension and whatever that could possibly be done to try and improve the performance of that walking foot, and it was still garbage. So I contacted Juki and told them how disappointed I was. And to their credit, they sent me a whole new one, because they were like, oh no, that's terrible. You should have better results than that. So they sent me a new one. Guess what? Exactly the same, total garbage, totally useless. I cannot use that walking foot. Lots of other people tried to tell me that I should just use the regular foot rather than a walking foot, but that also didn't work for me either. So when it came to quilting, this machine was totally useless for me when I actually needed to sew through 3 layers of fabric. I could easily put all the pieces together, but then when I had to quilt it, it just did not work. So this machine didn't work for half of the stuff that I needed to work for. Again, I was able to purchase an aftermarket foot, again, a Janome product that fits on here, and it does a way better job than the foot that my machine came with. So I just wish they would include something like a walking foot that is definitely going to work for you, because if you search online, you're going to see I am not the only one who struggles with this. It's got a real reputation for just being not great, is maybe the nice way to say it. And lastly, number 3, there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to the lighting of this sewing machine. So the Juki TL series includes only one sad little light bulb, which barely adds any light to your needle area. And it's just tucked in here underneath this area, but it casts so many weird shadows onto your bed that it actually makes it pretty hard to see what you're doing. So you almost would be better off without the light because the shadows are so annoying. And once again, I purchased an aftermarket product that is just a sticky little strip of LED lights that I stuck on the underside here that just make it so much more visible and so much more brighter. So all 3 things that are kind of my main gripes with this machine can be fixed, so I wouldn't really consider them deal breakers when it came to buying this machine. You can tell that I love this thing, right? It has a lot going for it, and I think it would be a great choice for a variety of sewists. And did I mention that when I go to my biannual sewing retreat, over half of the participants there, these are all ladies who are smart and good looking and know what's up, have one of these sewing machines sitting on their desk. True fact. Now, of course, the sewing machine also has other features that I didn't go into detail, like the knee lifter and the free motion quilting. And that's because I don't tend to use those features as much. But let me know in the comments if you have a Juki TL series and if you're searching for one or if you're thinking about buying one, and what your favorite feature is or what made you most excited to look into this machine. And if you like this video, you'll definitely want to check out my other review videos, including this one on the Reliable Maven 140 IS tank-based home ironing station. That is a lot to say about a super cool iron that Reliable sent me in order to review, and I've included all kinds of information about it in this video right here. As always, I'm wishing you happy sewing, and I'll see you in my next video.